The final episode of The Boys is almost here, and after one of the most gut-wrenching moments the show has ever produced, the weight of everything that is about to happen feels heavier than it ever has before. Homelander has that familiar seed of fear growing inside him again. The boys are carrying the grief of losing someone they genuinely loved. Soldier Boy is locked away in cryosleep, and Ryan, nobody quite knows where he stands or what he is thinking right now. With only one episode remaining in the entire series, here at Cinemaverse Studio, we are breaking down every major prediction and theory for how the finale plays out. Let us get into it.
Frenchie's death has permanently altered the emotional landscape of this final conflict. What began as Butcher's deeply personal crusade against the man who destroyed his family has grown into something shared by every single person left standing. This is no longer just about Becca. It is no longer purely about the broader fight against Soup's supremacy. Homelander took someone that all of them cared about, and that transforms the energy walking into the finale completely. Kimiko has now completed the process of absorbing a catastrophic level of radiation, an atomic bomb's worth in destructive energy that she can theoretically release directly into Homelander, mirroring exactly what Soldier Boy once did. The plan is to use her as the weapon that strips the V1 from his system and dismantles his newly acquired immortality. The show even confirmed this is achievable against V1, demonstrating it through Soldier Boy's confrontation with Homelander inside the Oval Office in the most recent episode.
That location also matters going forward. With the president now dead and Homelander believing himself to be a literal god, there is every reason to think he has claimed that office as his throne. A man who considers himself the supreme being on Earth would naturally occupy the seat built for the most powerful person in the country. This strongly suggests the finale's climactic confrontation takes place inside the Oval Office, which would also align closely with how things concluded in the original comic run. The comic version featured Homelander's death occurring in that exact location, though the path leading there looked very different, since the television series took its own direction, most notably by not making Black Noir a Homelander clone built as a failsafe. The show must construct its own route to a similar destination. The most likely version involves the boys converging on the Oval Office with Kimiko as their primary weapon, hoping to catch Homelander in a moment where the plan can actually be executed. However, Homelander is not naive. He laughed when Frenchie mentioned replicating Soldier Boy's power, possibly dismissing it as a bluff. But even a fragment of doubt in his mind would push him toward putting defensive measures in place. Ordinarily, Soldier Boy would be the resource he turns to in that situation. The problem is that Homelander himself put Soldier Boy back in the freezer, and he knows full well that Soldier Boy would turn against him the moment he was released. That door is closed entirely by Homelander's own hand.
Despite being locked away, Soldier Boy's story does not feel finished, ending his entire arc with a quiet ambush from behind in a penultimate episode would be a deeply unsatisfying conclusion for a character who occupied so much of this season. Something has to bring him back into the equation, and there are two realistic candidates for who might open that chamber. Ashley is the first possibility. She has spent seasons surviving by reading the room and making ruthless calculations about her own safety. The look on her face in episode 7, that quiet, terrified recognition that she may have run out of luck, suggested a woman finally understanding that loyalty to Homelander is no longer a guarantee of survival. Releasing Soldier Boy could be her last desperate gamble, betting that the chaos of his return gives her a window to escape everything she has been trapped inside. The Deep represents the second possibility. Stripped of purpose, rejected by the ocean, and completely cut off from the only identity he ever understood, the Deep has nothing left to protect. If releasing Soldier Boy creates enough disruption to remove Homelander from the equation permanently, freedom might feel more appealing than continued irrelevance. Either way, Cinemaverse Studio believes Soldier Boy finds his way out of that chamber before the finale concludes.
This is the question sitting at the very center of the finale's tension, and it is one that cannot be answered with complete confidence. Kimiko has the power. The process was completed, but she has never used this ability before, and she is walking into this fight soaked in fresh grief grief over friendship. Emotion can be both fuel and interference, and in a situation this precise, the difference between those two things could determine everything. There is a genuine possibility the show subverts expectations here. The Boys has never been a series that allows plans to unfold cleanly, and having Homelander neutralize Kimiko before she ever gets the chance to deploy her power would be both devastating and completely consistent with the show's DNA. Alternatively, she might reach him and find that the replicated power does not hit with the full force they anticipated. Either scenario would then open the door for a freed Soldier Boy to step in and provide the finishing blow that Kimiko's attempt began. Soldier Boy already told Homelander several episodes ago that he did not deserve to live forever. The finale may be where he makes good on that judgment. If Soldier Boy successfully drains Homelander of V1, the ideal scenario, at least from a storytelling perspective, would mirror the energy of the Season 3 finale while pushing it somewhere entirely new. Homelander, the Boys, and Homelander all present in the Oval Office, but this time with every force in the room aligned against one target. And if Homelander is eventually stripped of his power entirely, what would be most compelling is narrowing the final confrontation down to just him and Butcher, everyone else incapacitated or pulled back, leaving the two men whose collision has defined this entire series facing each other one last time. A powerless Homelander, genuinely afraid for the first time in his life, staring at the man who never stopped coming for him. Ryan might even be present in that moment. After what Homelander did to him in Episode 3, seeing him witness his father reduced to something small and frightened and desperate would carry enormous emotional weight. Homelander begging for mercy from the son he damaged would be the ultimate inversion of every dynamic the show has built around that relationship.
In the comic, Homelander was physically destroyed by the Black Noir clone, the failsafe Vought built in secret, and then Butcher finished Black Noir off with a crowbar immediately afterward. The show cannot replicate that sequence because Black Noir was never a clone in this version, but the spirit of that ending translates. Butcher, wounded and spent, facing a version of Homelander that has been completely hollowed out, stripped of power, stripped of followers, stripped of the last person who might have loved him. A man who called himself a god, reduced to exactly what Butcher always knew he was: weak, pathetic, alone. Butcher once said all of that directly to Homelander's face back in Episode 4, and the finale could deliver the moment where Homelander finally cannot argue otherwise. Unloved, powerless, and afraid, everything he has spent his entire life desperately trying to avoid becomes the reality he cannot escape. Butcher could kill him cleanly in that moment, but there is also a darker, more Butcher-appropriate version where he allows Homelander to feel every second of that humiliation before he ends it. The revenge for Becca does not have to be swift, it just has to be final.
Before any of that confrontation occurs, Homelander's grip on the public is already beginning to fracture. His demand for genuine worship rather than performative loyalty means he has begun turning on the very supporters who celebrated him. People who cheered for him, waved his flags, and defended him on every platform are now discovering that falling short of true belief is treated the same as open opposition. That level of extremism alienates even the most devoted followers, and when the Democratic Church of America narrative reaches the wider public alongside footage of his actual behavior, the collapse of support could accelerate rapidly. This matters for the finale because Homelander without a worshipping public is Homelander without his most fundamental source of stability. His psychological architecture depends on being loved. Take the power away and then take the adoration away, and what remains is the child from the lab, terrified, isolated, and completely unequipped to exist without external validation.
Butcher has been living on borrowed time for seasons. The only thread keeping him connected to the world has been the pursuit of Homelander. Once that is resolved, if it is resolved, the question of what comes next for him is genuinely open. And here at Cinemaverse Studio, the most fitting answer might be the most devastating one. With Sister Sage now possessing the knowledge to create a stabilized version of V1, There is a theoretical framework where certain individuals could survive a final deployment of the virus. Ryan, Sage, Starlight, and Kimiko could potentially be protected, and Butcher, having finally accomplished everything he set out to do, might decide that the world he always believed was better off without soups in it should actually become that world. One final act, one decision that closes everything. The revenge complete, the mission finished, and Butcher choosing an ending entirely on his own terms. It would be a conclusion that is simultaneously brutal, logical, and completely in character, which is exactly the kind of ending The Boys has always been capable of delivering.
The Deep has never once crossed to the right side of the moral line during this entire series, and there is no indication he will do so now. The video footage of him refusing to enter the water to save a drowning man is likely to circulate and destroy whatever remained of his public standing. Rejected by land and warned away from the ocean by the sea life he betrayed, he truly has nowhere left to exist. Two endings present themselves as the most probable. The sea creatures he abandoned and endangered finally corner him in the water, and he pays the price that Xander the shark promised. Or, and this would be the more poetic version, Starlight is the one who finishes it. Annie was subjected to the Deep's predatory behavior back in Season 1, in a moment the show has never fully resolved with genuine consequences for him. Having her be the person who ends his story would close that chapter properly. It would not be heroic in a conventional sense. It would simply be justice, long delayed but finally delivered. Either way, the Deep does not survive the finale, and he does not deserve to.
The final episode of The Boys runs 1 hour and 5 minutes, shorter than many fans were hoping for, but more than enough time for a show this skilled to land its ending with real force. Everything is positioned, the grief is fresh, the stakes have never been higher, and every character's journey is pointing toward a conclusion that has been building across 5 full seasons. Here at Cinemaverse Studio, we genuinely cannot wait to see how this ends. Drop your own predictions in the comments below. Make sure you are subscribed so you catch the full finale breakdown the moment it drops, and we will see you on the other side of the most anticipated episode of television this year.